Oh, thank God. Stardust Racers has officially reopened. It's over, guys. The nightmare has concluded. We can finally ride this coaster once again, or for the first time if you've never ridden it before. Personally, I did not expect this ride to reopen so soon. Actually, I thought we were going to be living in an alternate timeline where the coaster was closed for 1 to 2 years as we waited for a civil lawsuit to conclude. Thank heavens I was so monumentally incorrect, because I much prefer this outcome. It's truly astonishing how quick of a turnaround time we had, because I uploaded my video on the topic only 3 days ago. Initially, I wanted to be patient. I wanted to make sure I had all the facts and all the details about the accident so I wouldn't have to make a premature discussion. Yet after 2 weeks of sitting and waiting, I basically still had nothing to work with. But who knew I just had to wait until Friday for Universal to finally come forward with another press release. And here in this press release, they stated the following. As previously indicated, our comprehensive technical and operational review confirmed the ride systems functions properly throughout the boarding process, the duration of the ride, and upon the ride vehicle's return to the station. And our team members followed procedures throughout. Our extensive review was conducted working closely with local officials, and the state of Florida observed the testing and reviewed the results. In addition, the ride system manufacturer of record and an independent third-party roller coaster engineering expert conducted their own on-site testing and validated our findings. Safety, as always, is our top priority. To further assist guests in determining whether they can or cannot ride an attraction, we are updating operational procedures and attraction signage to reinforce existing ride warnings and physical eligibility requirements at Stardust Racers and other attractions. This means we are prepared to reopen Stardust Racers on Saturday afternoon, October 4th. So yesterday at the time of this video's release. There you go, that was Universal's response, and I have to say, I am still in full support of Universal. Personally, I don't think they did anything wrong. Universal is not a malice company. They would never cut corners or jeopardize safety. They have not displayed any of this behavior before or currently. You know, it just grinds my gears when I hear the fucking mainstream media go on their little tirades trying to smear and badmouth Universal in every possible way. Saying that, oh, this ride is unsafe, and what? There were previous incidents before this accident, like somebody getting a headache? Well, this is unacceptable. Universal should have known this ride was a danger. I can't believe this company would let the public on a ride they knew was unsafe. This kind of journalism, it annoys me. It pisses me off. It's all fear-mongering to get a catchy headline. And don't think that the family's lawyer, Ben Crump, is any different. In my opinion, he is just as guilty to contributing to this practice. For the last 2 weeks, he's been on a non-stop publicity tour, bad-mouthing Stardust Racers, bad-mouthing Universal, and saying that this whole accident is completely Universal's fault, and they should have known that this ride was dangerous. And sure, yes, he can make all of those claims, but he better have the receipts to back them up. And so far, I haven't been convinced. Hell, most of what this lawyer spews, I have to give heavy pushback to. Like a statement that there were multiple incidents on Stardust Racers, and now many victims are starting to come forward.
Stardust Racers roller coaster riders who have come forward to the family and our office leads us to believe that Kevin's case was not an isolated incident. Even before the ride opened, on April 30th, 2025, a woman complained in a recently filed lawsuit that while riding the Stardust Racers roller coaster, her head shook violently and slammed again into her seat's headrest throughout the duration of the ride. This is before the ride even opened. They had a complaint of a lady talking about she had restraint issues.
Yeah, so this woman who claimed that she rode the ride back in April, she didn't file her lawsuit until September 24th, almost a week after the Kevin Savala accident. And then the whole lawsuit was settled on September 26th, 2 days later, with a notice of settlement and a voluntary dismissal with prejudice, meaning that the case is permanently closed and she can't file the case again. So let me get this straight. She claimed she was violently shaken on Stardust Racers back in April before the ride opened, but she didn't file her lawsuit until months later after a bigger incident occurs, and then she settles the whole thing within 2 days. Call me crazy, but something doesn't quite add up here. Now, some people might call this lawsuit, frivolous, claiming that maybe the woman is trying to get some quick money by jumping on top of a situation that has a lot more public discourse, so this might be the perfect jumping off point to sue Universal, and potentially get a check. You know, some people might allegedly say that. Now, other cases that the lawyer is referring to about people having similar incidents on Stardust Racers, I can't find anything to substantiate what he's saying, unless he's referring to cases where people got a headache or got dizzy from the roller coaster, which, if this is all he's referring to, then I'm sorry, I can't be on Mr. Crump's side. I'm still gonna back Universal. Spoiler alert, almost everybody at one point has gotten a headache from a roller coaster. I mean, when I go to Universal, I certainly get a headache from time to time, and usually I get headaches even more so on other roller coasters that aren't at Universal. But do I sue parks like Six Flags Great America because I kept smacking my head into the restraint on Demon? No, I've ridden Demon before, I knew the risk, and even if I didn't, there's a warning sign in front of the entrance to alert me. Warning signs exist for a reason, they're trying to warn you. If you are prone to headaches, dizziness, have epilepsy or back problems or spinal issues, you should not be riding most roller coasters. Parks like Universal are not responsible for knowing your medical problems. That's your issue. If you have some kind of medical disability that might be impacted by a roller coaster, then you or your family have to make the appropriate judgment call whether or not to go on the ride. Sure, Universal, they can warn you, they can tell you not to go on the attraction, but ultimately, it's your decision, unless it's blatantly obvious that you cannot ride. Now keep in mind, what I'm saying is not discrimination. I'm not trying to discriminate against anyone who has a disability, despite what Ben Crump says. It's a safety risk. Universal can and should turn people away if they believe that their condition can jeopardize their life. And what we can see from Universal following this accident, they do appear to be taking some extra safety precautions. Now, if you want to ride Stardust Racers, you have to meet an additional criteria. Anyone now who is currently using a mobility device, they must be able to walk independently from that device. So if you are completely wheelchair bound and cannot walk independently, you will be turned away from Stardust Racers. And not just Stardust Racers, because Universal is implementing this on many of their other attractions. Monsters Unchained, Hagrid's, Velocicoaster, Dragon Racer Rally, essentially anything that features a lap bar with a few exceptions. Is this disappointing to hear? Yeah, a little bit. I do feel for those guests who will no longer be able to ride these attractions, but I can't really fault Universal for doing this. It's kind of like Dueling Dragons when somebody got hit in the face with a cell phone, and after that, almost every single ride at Universal implemented a locker system to ensure that no loose articles could be carried on the ride anymore. Luckily, no drastic, long-lasting changes were implemented onto Stardust. Back in my initial video, I was jumping to worst-case scenarios, like what if they had to trim and slow down Stardust? What if they had to install new comfort collars as a way to keep the riders upright? But no, none of that happened. According to the park, Mock Rides, third-party engineers, local and state investigators, they all came to the conclusion that the ride was functioning properly, it does not need to be updated, and it can continue to operate moving forward. All of these parties agree that Stardust Racers is safe enough to continue operation, all except the party of Ben Crump, who allegedly went on record to say that this reopening was a grave risk to public safety. If you couldn't tell, I am not a fan of Ben Crump, or his opinions, but it's for a very good reason. You want to know why I refer to this guy as a Johnny Cochran type lawyer? It's because he doesn't make any sense.
Pre-existing injuries. So it's almost as if they're washing their hands. But we believe that these were warning signs, that there was something wrong with the design of this ride, and that they tried to blame the victims.
Does that make sense? Ladies and gentlemen, I am not making any sense. None of this makes sense.
He doesn't pull in experts to support his theories or substantiate his claims. No, he's just telling us a story and playing off our emotions. For example, whenever anyone mentions that Mr. Savala had spinal cord atrophy and how it may be linked to the cause of death, he immediately starts spouting out that this is offensive and insulting to Mr. Savala, and if Universal believes that disabled people shouldn't go on a roller coaster, then why would they help him? It seems like he disregards critical talking points, like Mr. Savala's condition, so he can more effectively uphold his narrative of what happened. Perhaps if I heard a testimony from the medical examiner or the person person who performed the autopsy, and they were able to confirm what Mr. Crump is saying, then I would consider buying into his truth. But that hasn't happened yet. The only thing I have heard from Mr. Crump is the same talking point of Mr. Zavala having blunt force trauma. Okay. Where was the blunt force trauma? What definitively caused the blunt force trauma? And why was it reported that during the night of the accident, a defibrillator was deployed? So was this blunt force trauma located at his head or in his chest? Because a defibrillator is supposed to restart your heart's natural rhythm, not jumpstart your heart if it stops. So if he had blunt force trauma, you sure it wasn't due to him getting striked in the chest? It's very possible he could have suffered from commotio cordis, where a sudden blow to the chest, usually directly over the heart, can cause disruption in electrical signals. Or could it have been a cardiac contusion, where a widespread chest impact can lead to irregular rhythms? I'm just saying that if either of these situations ended up being the case, then I think Mr. Crumb's whole theory of Mr. Zala hitting the bar in front of him would completely fall apart. I was always skeptical about this theory. I do not think your head can actually reach the bar if you're sitting down. I think the more plausible scenario is that he struck his chest on the restraint. Of course, that's just what I think. We won't actually know the details until an autopsy report is released. I get that Mr. Crump, he's just doing his job. He's a lawyer, a civil rights lawyer. But that doesn't mean I can't criticize him and tell him that some of the things he's saying is BS. But man, this guy will not give the media interviews a rest. He is using every trick in the book to try and get the public on his side. I don't remember him going on a massive 2-week-long media campaign during the Icon Park accident. In fact, I didn't even know he was representing the family from the Icon Park accident. There was very little media coverage on whether or not Icon Park was in the right or wrong, because it was pretty cut and dry. The kid fell off from the ride. It was horrific. So it didn't take much elbow grease to win the public's favor. Stardust Racers, on the other hand, this whole situation has been a lot more gray. There could have been an argument to say that Universal, they were partially responsible for this accident. But as we now get more and more hindsight about the situation, this appears to be less and less true. Given that Universal has already come forward with their statement that the ride functioned as intended and multiple sources are backing them, and now that the ride has reopened, it looks like Crump's lawsuit is starting to unravel. As of now, it looks like Universal, they're not too concerned. After all, the only thing they implemented after the accident was some additional signage and an update to their policies. Plus, the whole argument that Mr. Crump is making that Universal employees help Mr. Savala onto the roller coaster doesn't appear to hold much water. To my understanding, every Universal employee knows that this is a big no-no. You are never allowed to help someone with a disability onto a ride. Employees are fully aware that this is a liability, and almost no one would want to risk their job for this. I think Mr. Crump is trying to use a hyperbolized version as what he constitutes as helping. Like, who's to say opening the gate for someone to hop on the ride doesn't count as helping? Or hitting the button to an elevator doesn't count as helping? I don't know what actually happened. Again, if the contrary turns out to be true, I will change my tune. If not, I'm not going to take this lawyer's word for it. Truthfully, I think the most logical outcome for this lawsuit is a settlement. This will not go to trial. Most lawsuits never do, only about 5% of them. My prediction is that Mr. Crump, he's going to do a few more TV interviews, he's going to badmouth Universal a little more, and then eventually Universal, they're going to be fed up with it, they're going to pay him off, shut him up, and then everyone can move on with their lives. No matter how this saga concludes, I just want to say that again, this was a tragedy, a terrible situation that should have never happened. I feel for the family, I really do. I don't even blame them for suing Universal, because if I was in the same situation, I would probably do the same. I'm just trying to take an objective and unbiased standpoint. At the end of the day, Mr. Savala, he should have never ridden the ride with his condition.